Hello, this is Hilary Robertson. Welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. Interestingly, this time I'm joined by Dr Christina Teenz Tan, who has collaborated with Dr Susan Lim, but they're not the composers of the music. The music has been composed and produced by Manu Martin. And the album, Lim Fantasy of Companionship for Piano and Orchestra, features the London Symphony Orchestra and London Voices with acclaimed pianist Ted Yoselson. This is a fascinating project that is all around AI, artificial intelligence. Dr. Susan Lim is a pioneer in the field of transplantation, robotics and stem cell research. And Dr. Christina Tan, who I will be speaking to, is a neuroscience researcher at Stanford University in California. And they're both fascinated by the possibility of enabling inanimates with artificial intelligence. And they're looking at what is life and what is non-life. And the music is beautiful. The music stands on its own as a beautiful composition, but the concept behind it is absolutely fascinating. And I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation. Welcome to Harmonious World.
So excited to be here.
This is fascinating because you're not a musician.
No, I'm not. I'm actually a doctor by training.
Exactly. So this is, first of all, when I heard the music, I thought this is beautiful. And then,
thank you. It's very kind.
No. And then when I read the story behind it, I was gripped by it because it's really made to kind of make you think about the concept of, you know, artificial intelligence and what we consider to be life and how we make connections to each other and all of those.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell me how you and Dr. Susan Lim first met and how you got this idea.
Well, she's actually my mother. So Dr. Susan Lim is the co-creator, and I am essentially the other co-creator. And really what we sought out to do is that we wanted to actually communicate the idea of a future between humans and inanimates coexisting in society. And both of us have huge passions for medicine and science, of course. But we also do have a passion for communicating scientific concepts, such as the future of AI and robotics through familiar platforms like music, and most recently through animation and film. And it was actually my first project that I worked on with the music. And so it was very, very exciting. And I'm very proud to share that the Lim Fantasy of Companionship for Piano and Orchestra was actually an original orchestral piece that was released in April this year. And you can now get it on Spotify, on Apple, and on Amazon.
Yeah, and it really is. They're very short movements, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. So the whole piece is about 30 minutes long, but it's broken down into multiple acts. And within each act, there's a few different tracks. So it's really engaging, and it tells a whole story if you listen to it. There's also a lot of animation that comes along with it in the booklet.
Yeah. Right. So Susan Lim is your mother.
That's right.
Oh, okay. So I don't need to ask how you met, because that's What's the connection to London? Because this was recorded at Abbey Road and with the LSO.
That's right. So initially, when we thought about where we wanted to record our music, we obviously, you know, Abbey Road Studios is like the holy grail of any musician's dream, and it was definitely, you know, our top preference as to where we wanted to go. And so we got in contact with the LSO and also with the London Voices, and so that's where we recorded our music.
How did you decide that Manu Martin was the right composer?
Yeah, so we have such a big, incredible and talented team. And Manu Martin, you know, he's the original composer, and he essentially is so brilliant, and he composed and orchestrated the entire Lim Fantasy so well. And when we found him, we initially brought to him some original tracks that were composed by two other artists, Joy Barua from India and Ron Danziger from Australia. And with these original songs, we actually brought them to Manu and essentially told him, could you orchestrate this? And he did so track by track, and it just snowballed from there, from one track into all of them.
Yeah. And it's essentially a piano concerto kind of, that's the sort of old-fashioned format of it in a way, but it's much more than that, isn't it?
It is. It's very interesting because you have various different elements to the piece. So first of all, you have the London Voices. At one point during in a track called Synthetic DNA, they actually come on and they actually sing out the alphabets, genetic code. So it's super interesting. And then also at another point, our guitarist comes out and plays the electric guitar. And so it has a rocker vibe to it too.
Yes. It's classical in the broadest sense of the word, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. In fact, Synthetic DNA is one of my favorite tracks. So that's interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Talk me through how you conceived of the concept of this, of putting the idea of AI and the relationship between AI and human beings into music. How did that first happen?
Sure. So the concept itself and the story behind the music was co-created by myself and Dr. Susan Lim. And in fact, the orchestral piece was inspired by, the original songs, which I talked about a little, composed for the musical, Alan the Musical, which is our first project that we actually conceptualized. And essentially, it kind of tells the story of a young female scientist who transforms her beloved childhood plush toy into this sentient, artificially intelligent companion. And through the story and through this journey, we explore themes of AI and what the future holds for the coexistence of humans and artificially intelligent life forms, which we call inanimates. And, whether that's smart technology, devices or robots, today they become more and more integrated in our lives. And through music and animation and film, we hope to start a global conversation about it. And so it's been pretty interesting. We know that there is this kind of perception of AI and robots as being cold and intimidating. So we wanted to portray these concepts in a softer fashion by using a plush toy or stuffed toy instead of this robot made of, a hard metal material, and hence the creation of Alan, who's our soft plush toy inanimate and main character.
Yes, because it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you ask somebody to describe anything to do with robotics or AI or anything, it would always be sort of almost like sort of R2D2, a heart, with very cold, and yet you're going for something that's much warmer and got more depth to it and more heart and soul.
That's right. And through our music, another one of the issues that we hope to tackle that faces society today is loneliness. And, through our musical and the concept and the theme of the future and what it looks like for humans and inanimates interacting, we hope to kind of, delve deeper into that and explore it more.
Yeah. Brilliant. So talk to me about your background and Dr. Lim's background as well. Where do you come from? How do you how have you ended up where you are today?
Yeah, so well, for myself, I was actually born and raised in Singapore. I went to high school there, and I moved over to the States to attend college at UC Berkeley, where I studied biology and also took some classes in creative writing. And that's where my passion for writing lyrics and writing stories really came from. And after that, I journeyed on over to Melbourne in Australia to study medicine at the University of Melbourne. And from there, I actually am now in the US. I'm actually in West Hollywood, Los Angeles, and I'm about to start my new job as a neurology resident at Cedars-Sinai Hospital.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dr. Lim, where is she based and what's her story?
Yeah, so she's currently based in Singapore, but she likes to spend, the way we think about it is like a third of the time in Singapore, a third of the time in London, and a third of the time in the US. So she's very global and travels a lot. But she did her training. She also grew up in Singapore, and she did her medical training in Australia as well. And she undertook her PhD in Cambridge. So she's lived in the UK as well.
Right.
My mom is truly incredible. I mean, not only is she an original kind of storyteller and film director, but she also did the first liver transplant in Asia. So that was pretty incredible.
Wow, that's an amazing achievement.
Yeah. She's I think she's really an inspiration for the family, and we all kind of look to her for kind of ideas and kind of advice and things. So it was really, really awesome to be able to share this project with her and to work on this interesting kind of storyboard.
Yes. So talk to me about the timing of this. So when was it composed? When was it recorded?
Yeah. So when I was in medical school, actually, is when we started composing the original song. So probably about a couple of years back. And the actual recording at Abbey Road Studios was in 2019. So all the musicians from all over the world, from Australia, from the UK, and from Singapore, and India, all flew to meet up at Abbey Road Studios in Studio One, and that's where we recorded the Lim Fantasy, which was really magnificent.
Yeah, well, and it's a beautiful recording. So obviously, then the pandemic hit, and lockdown and everything. And have you been in America the whole time during lockdown?
Yeah, so I have been. So right before it hit last year, that's when I moved over from Australia. So it was quite an unfortunate timing, but I was actually in San Francisco, and they handled the pandemic pretty well. So I was really glad to be there. But I do miss my family, and I'm looking forward to reconvening with them. We're actually going back to Abbey Road to record something new, a new exciting project later on this year, which will be great.
That's brilliant, because that was going to be my next question. So what does the future hold?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, we've actually been able to do a lot. So we have created a couple of animations, short films, using the Lim Fantasy, as well as some incredible animation created by an artist, Samudra, from India. And so we've actually entered into kind of film festivals and achieved some success there, winning some awards at the New York Film Festival, LA Film Festival, and most recently we've also been mentioned in the New York Times as in one of the articles is saying 5 things to check out this weekend, and we're very, very happy to be mentioned there for one of our music videos.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I will put all the links obviously into the show notes so that people can check all of these things out.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, we're available on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple. So any of those mediums would be perfect.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really good to talk to you.
You too. It's been awesome.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Christina and that you've enjoyed listening to the tracks. I started with Jungle Song, the entire track actually, which is quite short, and I'm finishing now with Synthetic DNA, which is definitely my favourite track on the album. So that was an interesting conversation, and I have several others lined up that I've either already done or that are scheduled in. Do please join me in the future, and meanwhile, if you can rate and review the podcast, I'd be very grateful. Thank you for joining me once more on Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.